Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Predatory Marketing 101. Today, we're talking about Grant Cardone and Daymond John. You guys know him. He's the undercover billionaire guy, Shark Tank over here. And they are saying something disgusting that I want to talk about. I've been saying how the self-help industry has really gone south for a long time, but this illustrates my point better than I ever could. And it also proves something which I want to talk about right now, which is that people are saying that Grant Cardone's changed. In my last video about Grant Cardone, they're saying three to 5 years ago, he was legit, that he pushed more into real estate. I miss the old Grant, right? Oh, really? Well, this is him from 2017. So 3 years ago, back when he was legit. What was he saying then?
Yeah. You're down, a guy's sitting there right now watching this thing. I got my last grand, dude, and I got Christmas coming. Should he spend it on this?
Absolutely.
What? These guys, these little sharks, are selling, and it's an appropriate word, because they will eat you alive if you let them. They're selling a $1,000 product that gets you Daymond on Demand, Rise and Grind by Daymond John, and a 10x Growth Con ticket. And they're saying if you have $1,000 left to your name, bankrupt yourself to buy this product. Now, I'm gonna, of course, tell you the obvious, which is that is insane advice. Look at these guys. They will sell anything. They don't care who you are, how broke you are. All they care about is the numbers. I've been saying this. You guys say, hey, it's just a few bad apples in the industry. This is the industry. Where do you guys think I get this stuff from? Grant Cardone? He's like one of the biggest in this industry. Daymond John, massive in this industry. Why are you guys pretending it's not the mainstream of this industry pushing this narrative? The sooner people call this out, the better.
This offer today is $9.97, grantcardone.com.
This is disgusting.
/shark. A guy's sitting there right now watching this thing. I got my last grand, dude, and I got Christmas coming. Should he spend it on this?
Absolutely.
I would tell you the same thing.
This is unethical and it's gross.
I'll tell you why. Because
go ahead, Daymond.
The minute you learn this and you then go out and get a trademark instead of a patent that now saved you $20,000.
Look at this reach, Olympian level mind tricks. This guy literally just said, well, yeah, you're broke, right? You have $1,000 left to your name. You buy this. Why is it going to be worth it? Well, because when you go to get a patent versus a trademark, you're going to save $20,000.
Hey, Daymond, Earth to Daymond.
People who have $1,000 left aren't worried about a trademark versus a patent. You buffoon. They're worried about putting bread on their table. I know it's a foreign concept to rich people like you. You guys love to flex your wealth. But poor people don't have this luxury. What disgusts me about this industry is how they have no conception of people you should not sell to. Do you guys realize that if you sell get-rich products, they will always be sold? Anybody poor is going to want to buy that product, right? Because it's like selling a cure for cancer. Oh, this magic bean has the cure for cancer, lasts $1,000. Of course, you're going to buy that magic bean for cancer. Same thing with get-rich courses, which is why the way to be ethical in this industry is first of all, why would you have an $1,000 product? But okay, if you do want an $1,000 product, make it a premium product for people who are in that price range, right? Qualify your prospect. Don't just say if you have $1,000 left, it's relevant. It's not. They have bigger problems. And how dare you guys pitch this? How dare you?
Or the minute you realize you weren't necessarily ready for distribution, you had to put a couple of things in order.
Buddy, of course they're not ready for distribution. They have $1,000 left to your name. Now, I want to point one final thing out, which is a good thing to know. There's two versions of this talk, the exact same talk. There's the one that Grant Cardone has on his YouTube channel, and there's the one that was re-uploaded by this guy right after the video. What's interesting, what I found to be very interesting, is that there's a slight difference between these two videos. I don't know if you know that. Like something was cut out of this video, cut out of Grant's video. Let's check out and see what it is.
A guy's sitting there right now watching this thing. I got my last grand. Should he spend it on this?
Oh, actually, did you notice there's a little cut there from here to here? Look at this cut. What could he possibly have cut out from this video? What could he feel like he didn't want people to see?
Sitting there right now watching this thing. I got my last grand, dude, and I got Christmas coming.
Oh.
Sitting there right now watching this thing. I got my last grand. Should he spend it on this?
Looks like he cut out the part where he said, and he's got Christmas coming up. I was wrong, guys. Maybe these guys do have a conscience. They felt bad about the part where they say, and he has Christmas coming up. They said, nah, that's a little too predatory. But the part where we tell a guy with $1,000 left to spend his money on our course, that's fine. But the part about Christmas, let's clip that out. That's not such a good look for us. And people wonder why I rail against this industry. Obviously, guys, look, is it everybody in this industry that's bad? No. Look, sometimes I'm a little hyperbolic. It's not the whole industry. Of course not. Why I get so intense is because it is the people at the top. It is the Grant Cardones that I'm talking about, guys. You know, like if it were your small fries doing some, shady things, okay, I get it. Every industry has a few bad apples, like we call it. But this industry, the self-help industry, it's the people at the top that are the bad apples. I don't make you look bad. People say Coffeezilla's always hating on us. I don't make you guys look bad. Grant Cardone is making you look bad. Daymond John is making your industry look predatory. Not me. I'm just the messenger, baby. I'm just playing you back what they said, and I'm holding them to account. And look at this part, dude. In maybe the biggest feat of irony, they say this right here.
You need to get selfish. It's about you. You can't help anybody if you can. And we're not telling you to hurt people, though.
What?
We're not telling you to be predatory. We're not telling you to do anything of that nature.
Would you say that people should sell a GrowthCon ticket? What is that, a glorified concert with a bunch of pitches from Grant's little team of little pitchmen? Oh, and then Daymond on demand. Are you going to tell them to charge that to someone's last $1,000? Try to sell somebody on that? Would that be predatory? Guys, fix up your industry, okay? You complain about me. All these gurus are like, Coffeezilla is such a hater. Dude, if this stuff wasn't here, wouldn't be talking. So why don't you fix up your own industry? And then we'll start talking about how great this industry is. This is 3 years ago they were doing it, as you saw recently in the last video, Greg. Today we're talking about a bank that won't let you withdraw your money. A bank where almost $100 million has vanished. Or has it? Because I've traced some of the missing funds, and I think some people are hiding the truth. Even worse, our regulators and safeguards may have failed us. Let me show you what I mean. Today we're talking to a bunch of people who found their money frozen in their bank last year. 6 months later, they started getting paid out, but some of the money is missing. Welcome to the Discord Diner. All right, let's start with the basics. What is your name and how much money did you have on your savings app?
Well, my name is Colin. My savings was $53,105.95.
How much are you getting back?
Not a single penny.
Hey, my name's Dave. I lost more than $70,000. The balance I received back from Evolve was $0.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Schwartz. I had $43,000 that I put into my savings account. I consider myself one of the luckier ones in the situation. I was offered $36,000 back. So I lost a total of $7,000 in the situation.
Hi, my name is Jamal. I have received a little over $6,000 back. I'm still owed $11,000. My wife has received $100 back of her $55,000.
Now, this was obviously surprising. People who had put their money in a savings account were told they don't actually have that amount. Instead, the bank told them, we're going to give you whatever we think you have. In some cases, it was pennies on the dollar, seemingly at random. And to explain this vicious game of financial Russian roulette, we're going to have to map out what's really going on here. All of the people you've been hearing from save their money in fintech companies like Yada, Juno, and others. Slick financial apps that are not banks, but took deposits while advertising FDIC insurance. They did this using a middleman called Synapse to connect them with a real bank called Evolve Bank and Trust, who was FDIC insured in the event of a bank failure. So FDIC insurance, which is an American program where banks are insured with up to $250,000 against bankruptcy failure, it doesn't apply here because a bank didn't fail. A middleman did. Theoretically, everyone's money should still be safely held at Evolve. But this is where our mystery begins, because as the bankruptcy carried on, Evolve said they didn't have all the customers' money. There's a giant gap between what Synapse said they had versus what Evolve did. According to the Wall Street Journal, up to $96 million might be missing. Evolve Bank claims they're not the problem. They literally don't have customers' money because they were told to send it to other banks like AMG and Lineage. Why? The story goes that in late 2023, Synapse wanted to diversify banks instead of relying on just one. So they set up relationships with other banks like AMG and Lineage to hold customers' money and diversify. Makes sense. Now, most customers weren't aware of this change because it was only noted in an opt-out email basis sent to customers, meaning if you didn't see it when it came through, your money may have been moved without you ever knowing or approving it. Normally, this wouldn't matter, and some fintechs like Yada even pitched it as a way to get increased FDIC insurance coverage, which in hindsight is ironic. But the effect is that everyone's money was shuffled around like a game of 3-card Monte. Of course, Synapse in theory should have records of where all that money went, but Synapse is now in bankruptcy, and not everyone agrees with their numbers, specifically Evolve Bank and Trust, who says they don't have as much of the customer funds as Synapse says they do. To prove it, Evolve hired Incurra Consulting to do their own reconciliation of the bank's balance sheet, and their numbers versus Synapse's numbers is what has created the gap. These results were given to customers on November 4th, the day before the presidential election. Always a pretty good day to hide bad news. That is, you don't have as much savings as you thought you had. Customers are understandably confused and angry. Whoever's fault this is, it's not theirs. So that's what we're trying to uncover. Where is this nearly $100 million of missing funds? Somebody has it, but everyone's saying it's not them. The other banks, AMG and Lineage, by the way, do not deny they had some of the money from Evolve, but they tend to agree with Synapse's version of the ledger and have already paid out based on that. Meanwhile, Evolve is also saying they've paid out their fair share. So we're stuck in this horrible situation where people are using different ledgers to say, oh, we fully paid out everyone. And some people are getting pennies on the dollar, seemingly at random.
My name is Max, and I have a little bit over $21,000 in a Yota account.
How much is the bank going to give you back?
Evolve is going to give me $17 back out of those $21,000.
How does that feel? I mean, what is that like?
A slap in the face. It's an insult. Honestly, I would have rather them not giving me anything and say that they cannot proceed with the complete reconciliation that they initially intended to do, than to give me scraps and then basically washing their hands with it.
My name is Piblar, and I put $20,000 into my Yada savings account. After the reconciliation, Evolve has told me that they're going to offer me $700 out of that $20,000.
Insulting. It's insulting.
So my name's Corey, and I had about $34,000, a little over $34,000 left in my account at the time of everything being frozen. Well, they are giving me back $0 out of the $34,000 that I am supposed to have.
Now, with so much on the line, all of these banks have been desperately trying to put out their side of the story, with specifically Evolve's being the most different. And they've been sharing screenshots of hundreds of millions of dollars moving from their bank to these other banks, saying that they just don't have the money. Whereas Synapse's CEO, on the other hand, has been very vocal as well. Even one of the fintechs, Yada, has sued Evolve. But at the end of the day, it's become a bit of a he said, she said, where everyone has their own numbers that they're using to say we're right, but it's hard to rely on anyone's word. So I wondered if we could trace the problem ourselves a little differently, not relying on any one source, but instead going to everyone, just asking questions and maybe finding some different threads to pull on that gives us insights. And this is where things got interesting. Little by little, I was able to get a bunch of internal emails and documents between these companies, even get detailed banking records. All of this showed big problems, but they had been brewing for much longer than I thought. Way before everything blew up in May of 2024, rewind the clocks back to when everyone's money was in one place at Evolve, and let's look at some internal documents that were sent to Synapse. It's September 25th, 2023. That's the day Evolve sent notice that Synapse had breached the Master Services Agreement by failing to fully fund the FBO account. By the way, FBO just means for benefit of. Plain English, it means it's the customer's account. The money people were putting into these fintechs wasn't fully funded by what was in the actual bank account per their agreement. That's what Evolve says. Evolve then demands $50 million in a reserve account to be filled within 2 days of the letter. They also notify Synapse that they're going to take $16 million from what is called the Synapse's fee account to hold it for end users, aka customers. Now understand, the fees, that just means the interest Synapse would have been paid on the cash they hold with Evolve. Synapse, of course, is a middleman, so a lot of that money they're going to make from interest is just passed on to fintechs like Yada, who then in turn passes it on to customers. So if Synapse is short 16 million, that means Yada and now a lot of people are short $16 million. Everyone's getting squeezed, but that's just the start of the problem. So you remember Synapse owes $50 million in the next 2 days. But when it comes due, Synapse gets a termination letter from Evolve, and then they send their own email. Now, before we open this, understand, customers had no idea that their money might not be fully funded at the bank and were never notified of these problems. Everything you're about to hear is being whispered in emails right now. And what is being said, like deliberate misstatements, factual realities, potential harm, these are white collar words for, hey, we think this is going to end in disaster and we think you did it. But of course, nobody knows that yet except for Synapse and Evolve. Synapse even seems to anticipate this would eventually go public because they write in their letter, we do not expect this response will prompt significant change, but we hope it will correct the record and provide factual transparency to those who may read your letters. Like us, for example. They're anticipating outside parties we're going to come in and read all of these. Now, in here we find Synapse blaming the deficiency in the customer account on Evolve. They accuse Evolve of misappropriation of funds, a situation caused by Evolve itself. Synapse claims that 12 days prior, they had notified Evolve that Evolve was charging fees from customers' accounts that they shouldn't have. Basically, they were payment processor fees. The payment processor was called TabaPay. And this should not have been on the customer to pay it. According to Synapse, about $12 million in fees were charged to their customers. And Synapse says this $50 million demand you guys gave us, that's retaliation for us telling you that you have been misappropriating these funds. Synapse then also highlights a $13 million account analysis charge that was also improperly taken from customers' money. So both sides are basically demanding tens of millions from each other. And we'll get to some concrete evidence in a moment, but I want to flag that for right now, Evolve, Synapse, the chilling realization is that whoever's right, this collapse began over a year ago. And more importantly, before the migration of funds out of Evolve Bank. Banking experts who have been watching this unfold, by the way, have commented on this. Jason Mikula is our fintech and banking resident expert. He agreed to help me get to the bottom of this. And here's what he told me.
In my mind, one of the biggest worst decisions was allowing this brokerage migration to take place, which is on both Synapse and Evolve, right?
Yeah.
Allowing that migration to take place when it would seem that everyone knew the records were not accurate and reliable and that there was a shortfall. Because that has really compounded the difficulty of trying to unwind this situation and understand what happened.
Exactly. Why would you shuffle everyone's money around to different banks if you hadn't sorted out where everyone's money was in the first place? This is the first question I brought to Evolve, the question of the shortfall. Evolve's position appears to be, there's no shortfall of funds at Evolve, but that can't be true based on their September 2023 correspondence. They're the ones who said you didn't fully fund the account. There had to be a shortfall. Now, how big exactly it was is a little trickier to figure out. Not that I haven't tried. Remember, I do have a bunch of internal banking records from thousands of customers, which, by the way, I can't believe they didn't make me sign an NDA for or redact in any way, which I thought was incredibly irresponsible. Either way, essentially, I looked through everybody's, bank records. It was monthly statements for Synapse's customers going back literally years at Evolve. And I used a couple of scripts to turn these PDFs into a database and queried it for certain fees. Now, I was able to reproduce some of Synapse's claims. It does appear true that Evolve seems to be charging a bunch of fees to customers' accounts that they really shouldn't have. And it does go back years. Let me repeat that because it's really important. Customers were being charged improper fees directly from their accounts that should not have been there. And to my understanding, those fees have never been repaid. Why didn't Synapse address this sooner? I don't know. It seems like they brought it up only in 2023 when this has been happening for several years. I can't figure that out. But Evolve's position seems to be much harder to explain. They say that some of these fees were owed by Synapse. That was part of their master agreement. But I got a copy of that agreement, and it seems like those fees were put in place later. It's very confusing, but the point is, did the customers ever get their money back? I asked Evolve about this in an email, and was sent Evolve's lawsuit with Yada. In it, they kind of appeared to admit in the lawsuit that there were improper fees, but maybe it was an administrative mistake. And specifically that might be made up for by this reserve account, which they funded mostly using Synapse's money, which I think is funny. Quote, Evolve transferring over $35 million from the reserve to customer accounts. Later, they state they had up to $43 million in a reserve account by the end of 2023. It's worth emphasizing that while Evolve says there was never a shortfall, and even if there was, they had it covered, the reason Synapse went bankrupt is kind of because of this shortfall. According to the Wall Street Journal, Synapse tried to sell itself and neared a deal with TabaPay. But TabaPay walked away over concern about the potential size of the shortfall, people familiar with the matter said. Now, yes, to those of you who have paid attention, TabaPay fees is part of the reason for all this disaster, and they also almost bought Synapse. Confusing, small world. The point is, how can Evolve say there's no shortfall, but everyone else seems to think that there is? Whether or not you believe this comes from improper fees that they took from customer accounts, I don't really care. The point is the chain of events here. Synapse notifies Evolve of missing funds. Evolve then says, okay, funds are deficient. Synapse, you owe $50 million to cover any possible liabilities. We're blaming it on you. And by the way, we're going to keep $16 million or so this month. Obviously, to make sure your customers get the money they're owed. Of course, this leaves Synapse and the fintechs that rely on it strapped for cash. Synapse reacts by moving a lot of their money outside of Evolve on an opt-out basis to other banks. But by this point, both parties, Evolve and Synapse, both know that there's a shortfall in the customer accounts. Both disagree about how big it is, who's responsible for filling the gap, but both of them still move the money, which makes no sense because suddenly the discovery of these mistakes is swept under the rug and all the money's shuffled around. So was the money actually missing? Was it covered in the reserve account? We don't actually have a good way of knowing, but it gets even worse. Because one of the big events that actually led to this collapse was the Mercury migration. Mercury is yet another fintech company that confusingly markets itself as a sort of bank like Yada or Juno. On Google, it's described as Mercury Bank, and then directly underneath that, Mercury is a financial technology company, not a bank. Clear as mud. Anyways, Mercury Bank, which is not a bank, worked with Synapse up until 2023, and they were by far the biggest client with over $3 billion in assets. But one day, they decide they don't really need Synapse. They want to work directly with Evolve. Now, that would be fine, but when you have a gap in customer funds, or might have a gap, it starts to get a little questionable because Mercury got paid out. They migrated. They got all $3 billion. Once again, Jason Mikula explains why this might be a problem.
But just because, somebody was using Yada and happened to have their Yada balance assigned to Evolve versus Mercury or Nomad or Yield Street or whatever, who, maybe wound down their program earlier, there is no justifiable reason why these Yada and Juno users should be the one, eating the losses just because they were sort of the last man standing, so to speak.
Absolutely. And I think the point is, once you realize there's a shortfall, people running for the door should start to be very heavily scrutinized because exactly the problem you said, which is that it just becomes sort of there's this moment at FTX where everyone realizes oh, they may not have all the money. Everyone runs for the door. Some people are just faster than others, right? And that seems to be a huge problem here where, and I don't want anyone, at the end of the day, no end user should have to bear the brunt of this. But if you're actually thinking about what it would look like for billions of dollars to take a loss on this, maybe you're looking at maybe 95 cents on the dollar, maybe 90 cents on the dollar per customer. Whereas now we're having a lot of people get made completely whole and some people basically getting zero. Or maybe 10 cents on the dollar. This is so unfair. And this even extends to Yada itself and customers themselves. They're getting these wildly different statements where some people go, I got all my money back. Why? I don't know. It's literally the funny thing is, YATA began as a lottery. It is a lottery. But congratulations, you got what you paid for, because we are literally rolling the dice with whether your money is there or not. And it has nothing to do with you or your decisions, the quality of your decisions. This is literally, we put our money in the same exact place. And for reasons that are completely unrelated to us, you get no money, I get all my money back. That makes no sense.
I hope by now you're grasping how gross this whole situation is. Mercury Bank got 100% of their $3 billion or whatever back, while the much smaller fintech companies are eating up to a $96 million loss. We're not exactly sure how big the shortfall is, for absolutely no reason really, other than Mercury left Synapse before it blew up. I should note, Mercury would unequivocally deny that they moved for any improper reasons or that they were at all part of the cause of this collapse. But I do think we should be skeptical of the timing of all this, because in behind the scenes emails from Synapse to Evolve, we find out that Mercury decided to leave Synapse the same day that Evolve said there was a deficiency in the FBO account. So did Mercury find out that there were problems at Synapse before anyone else and run for the door? Or was this a very coincidental timing and they had planned it all along? I asked Mercury and they told me, quote, Mercury made the decision not to renew its contract with Synapse long before informing Synapse of the decision to terminate the relationship. Also telling me, quote, having direct relationships and integrations with our partner banks was in the best interest of Mercury and our customers. Clearly denying any coincidental timing. A month later, though, they also sent me another message saying Mercury has decided to end its relationship with Evolve Bank and Trust. Make of that what you will. I should also note, one of Evolve's executives left the company around the collapse, citing integrity as the reason for him leaving. Evolve Bank and Trust had no comment on this, understandably. Multiple other executives have also left the company. Now, I have extensively questioned Evolve for months about all of this, and I finally found one lead worth pursuing. Remember when Evolve noticed the shortfall? It withheld funds from Synapse. It put them in something called a reserve account. Well, throughout my conversations with Evolve, they referenced this account as if it still had money to pay people, saying that they had $43 million in reserve to pay out customers at the end of 2023. And along the way, I asked them, well, did you pay it out? You know, given that nearly $100 million may be missing, it would go a long way to fill that gap. And they told me, quote, we have provided updates regarding the reserve accounts in several of the bankruptcy hearing filings. Those hearings and filings are public. Evolve continues to hold reserve accounts on behalf of end users to be used as necessary, which is a very unhelpful way of answering a yes or no question. Did you hand out the money? Evolve instead points me to mountains of documents in a bankruptcy hearing. But funny enough, the person in charge of that bankruptcy seems confused also about Evolve's position. This is according to the bankruptcy trustee herself. Quote, Evolve has declined to report the potential use of reserve funds to pay end users. So that's an alarming statement coming from the person whose job it is to know where the money is in a bankruptcy. On Evolve's website, they say they hold $35 million in reserve funds it will distribute if the reconciliation indicates such distributions are appropriate. But whose reconciliation? That's the whole problem, isn't it? Is it Synapse's or the one Evolve hired out that says they don't owe any extra money, right? They've been using that to disagree with everybody. So what are we talking about here? According to them, they've paid out the money. There is no shortfall, meaning the $35 million is not owed to customers and instead goes where? Well, I asked them exactly that, and they responded, the funds will be handled in accordance with the relevant terms of the parties' master bank services agreement, which again is not helpful. And it concerns me that maybe Evolve is trying to find a way to hold on to this money for themselves, saying that they've paid out everybody and that this is just millions of dollars extra. If they didn't think they could do that as an option, they can and should just say so directly and publicly. They did not. I was also confused about exactly how much money they had. In emails to me, they mentioned $43 million at the end of 2023. According to their website, they have $35 million right now. What happened to the $8 million difference? I asked them about this, and once again, they refused to answer, citing, quote, ongoing legal processes that prevented them from discussing it. Look, I'll tell you where the money is as soon as all the lawsuits about missing money come to a close.
To be clear, I think everyone in this story should be scrutinized, but Evolve is a regulated bank, and regulated banks, most of all, and people with money in their reserve accounts even more so, should be scrutinized the most, especially since Evolve is where the shortfall started in the first place. Remember, months before anyone knew about the missing funds, them and Synapse were disagreeing about it in internal emails. So while, yes, I am in favor of a full reconciliation with all the data across all the banks, until we get that, we need to look at who still has money in this ecosystem and who had the money when all these problems first started showing up. All the while holding in our mind that, like all complicated stories, this is not just going to be a matter of one bad guy. Evolve, you know? I do think Synapse rightfully deserves plenty of blame as well, as long as we remember that Synapse is not the name people trusted and that ultimately they're in bankruptcy and can't pay more than they have anyways. The reason ultimately people, customers, trusted these fintech companies is because they saw FDIC insured slapped on the label and reasonably assumed that the regulated banks would keep them safe. And they absolutely did not. Not to mention, we can't forget about the regulators either.
We are not going to get a believable, satisfying answer about what happened here absent some kind of litigation or congressional. Basically, people need to be under oath answering questions or producing documents in response to subpoenas before we are going to have a true idea of what happened here. Like, I would like to see, Evolve leadership, Scott, Sankit, before a congressional investigatory committee where they are testifying under oath. And the Fed, actually, for what it's worth, because the Fed absolutely asleep at the wheel, not doing its job, supervising specifically Evolve. There are other regulators at play, but the Fed by far holds the most culpability here.
Yeah, that's true. Jason has a point here. As much as it's Evolve's job as a regulated bank to have the right controls in place, it's also the regulator's job to make sure all of this is happening. Now, recently, this was actually brought up and addressed directly by the Fed chairman.
In April 2024, Synapse Financial Technologies, a fintech company that provided banking-as-a-service solutions, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Chair Powell, since the Federal Reserve Board is a supervisor of the Evolve Bank and Trust, could you provide any updates on what you're doing to ensure that my constituents receive their funds and the expected timeline for them to receive their funds?
So as their supervisor, as you point out, we've been pressing that bank to get money back to their customers, and we're actively engaged with the bank as they take steps to do so and return that money. We're deeply concerned about the complaints that we've heard and aware of concerns raised during the bankruptcy proceedings. And to the extent there are violations of law, we'll follow up on that.
Well, there you have it. The Fed is deeply concerned. Unfortunately, there's not much of substance beyond this concern. We know that Evolve does not agree they owe any more funds. So what exactly does Jerome mean when he says this?
We've been pressing that bank to get money back to their customers, and we're actively engaged with the bank as they take steps to do so and return that money.
Whose money are we talking about here? And whose reconciliation are we relying on? Are we talking about the $35 million Evolve holds in reserve to be used as necessary? Like, yeah, that'd be great, but we haven't seen it. So yes, I'm glad Jerome is concerned, deeply concerned, but concerns don't pay bills. If you really want to know how things are actually going in a way that isn't sugarcoated, just listen to the bankruptcy trustee who in her last meeting said to the victims, quote, "I hope you get some resolution. I'm increasingly pessimistic that resolution will happen here." And that is the cold truth. Look, I don't really know how to wrap this up. I'm going to be honest. There's so many people at fault here, so many ways you could slice the blame up, and I don't know how to close it in a way that's not depressing. Like, honestly, I considered scrapping this video many times because there's not a great resolution here. It's just you can explain that something very deep has gone wrong, but what else? I mean, I can't tell you that the funds are magically going to appear. At some point, though, I realized if I didn't report on it, it's kind of like erasing the experience of all these people who've slipped through the cracks of a regulatory system built to protect them and that didn't, and is now trying to forget that they exist. So I'm making this in the hopes of just bringing Evolve to the table to spend tens of millions of their reserve funds on the people who deserve it. I also hope it gets more regulatory attention and forces all the banks to the table to share their data and ultimately pay their fair share. But until then, I will be honest, it is a very grim picture. And I'm afraid the people who we've spoken to, there is a real chance that they won't get justice here. Until then, all we can do is tell their stories and honor them.
I was putting all this money into the savings account with the hopes of one day being able to purchase a house. And I was getting close to that goal up until everything was frozen.
I don't have a consistent paycheck that I can plan off of. So that's kind of my money to make sure that I make it through to when I can actually make money again. And so I don't lose my house, don't lose my car. I can pay all my bills on time. It's very, very important for me to have that fund behind me.
Money's already tight in this day and age, so to not have access to that large of a sum of money is pretty depressing.
And initially when it hit, it was just like, oh, I'm out $20,000. But now that time has gone by, I realize that it's not just the money that's gone, it's the time that I put in to make that money. And it's just a waste of time at the end of the day, multiple years of my life.
I've been in not great health for a couple of years now. I'm recovering from a surgery to remove kidney cancer. I've got chronic pain from 2 car accidents and a hip surgery, a thyroid condition, polyp in my gallbladder, et cetera, et cetera. This money, the $53,000, was part of a settlement from the car accident. I've been selling stock from my inheritance to pay bills rather than using this money, which was supposed to be for day-to-day expenses and rent.
I consistently put the same amount every paycheck this whole time. And I never touched the money because that's what it was, emergency fund. And funny enough, this year, everything happened. The house had issues, my mom got sick. I mean, the list goes on, and it's so funny how the one year I actually need the money, I don't have it. So yeah, that money meant a lot, and it's been difficult. It's been difficult for sure.
Hi, quick update. After recording and pressing Evolve for months, they finally provided a public update saying they found more money at their bank belonging to customers, and they sent it out. They declined to say how much was found or whether they used the reserve account to pay it. But from public reports, some are getting paid back fully, others a little bit, and others are still getting nothing. Evolve is now offering to help the financial costs of a full reconciliation across all banks, which is a credit to them, but it's unclear whether that's going to happen. It's all left me wondering how it's possible for banks to find customer funds they've had for almost a year but didn't know they had. Either way, I hope this gets resolved soon. I hope Evolve finds the rest soon, or somebody does, and they use that reserve fund to make people whole. These people have waited long enough. Thanks for watching. That's the last update I have. Wow. Another episode on London Real. So, Sue, what's going on? Well, let me explain. I was sifting through some London Real videos, watching Freedom as I do, and as we all do, really. I mean, I was waving my American flag and watching London Real, and I came across a video where his comments were disabled, and I thought to myself, this is Mr. Free Speech. Mr. I've been fighting for free speech since 2011. Why are the comments disabled? Why? What's he afraid of people saying? Well, he was promoting this guy named Tika Tiwari. He's this crypto guru who's selling a $2,500 newsletter. And he wasn't just promoting him a little bit, like having him on a show once, and they just side mentioned this guy's little scheme called 5 coins to 5 million. He was promoting it everywhere. He promoted it several times on his show. He promoted it several times in email. But what really pushed me over the edge is when I kept getting advertisements from London Real to sell me Tika Tiwari's newsletter. And I started to realize, the only reason you would spend money to advertise someone else's product is if you are getting a kickback on that product. And nowhere had I seen him disclose that he's getting a kickback. So I thought to myself, I've got to investigate more. I've got to figure out more of what's going on here with this Tika Brian Rose relationship. So I looked into who Tika Tiwari is, because going by the comment sections that weren't disabled, people don't like this guy. They think he's a scam, but we've got to do our due diligence. So the first thing we find out about Tika Tiwari and his 5 coins to 5 million, which is a very catchy title, I'll grant him, is that he used to work for some banks, but he eventually was sanctioned by FINRA and can no longer be a broker. So that's already a little bit fishy, but okay, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Now he sells newsletters on crypto, and he's become an Agora subsidiary. Now, Agora, if you don't know, they're a publisher, and they specialize in like these gurus who say they're going to make you rich. They're going to make you rich. I'll read you a few of them right now. I have a few of their newsletters pulled up. They're always saying they're going to make you, all the money in the world, right? This hidden loophole that makes this a must buy. Most companies that do what this company does have to pay 95% of their revenue out to shareholders in dividends. Wall Street's most profitable stock strings. Imagine a system so powerful it could alert you to stocks ready to rally 122%, 123%, 155%, and 260%. How rich could you become using this information? Okay, my point with showing you these is to show you that the hype newsletter, that's standard stock and trade for the business. Tika Tiwari claiming to make 5 coins to 5 million is nothing new. People have been doing this for years, and let me just give you a simple thought experiment. If it was that easy, why wouldn't everyone be rich at that point? Right? If there's so many of these newsletters out all claiming the same thing, why wouldn't everyone become rich? And something you should ask yourself is, if these guys or Tika Tiwari had so much insight into where the stocks are going to go, how you can make so much money, if he really knew 5 coins you could just invest in and they'd quickly become $5 million, why wouldn't he do it himself? Well, Tika answers this, and this is the heart of this piece, because I think that Tika Tiwari deserves an Oscar for his acting performance, because one of the things he says is, oh guys, hey, I hear you. Hey, I would think the same thing. You should be skeptical, but the real reason that I do this is to help people. Why do I charge $2,500? To help people.
So I had this unique experience in 2017 in crypto than I had ever made before. More money than I could spend, and I had to ask some very serious questions about what I wanted to continue to do. Once money no longer became a primary driver, then I had to think about what was going to add value to me. And what adds value to me is helping people make better financial decisions.
It literally makes no sense. It makes zero sense, because if you really wanted to help people, the fastest way to help as many people as possible is to give away your information for free, right? It's to give it away for free. If you didn't care about making money, why are you price gouging people $2,500 for information? But the way he sells it, man, I mean, he really pulls your heartstrings. In another Oscar-winning performance, Tika, he really digs deep and talks about his past.
But why are you sharing with this? Why are you sharing this with me? Why?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to the audience about this because it's important. Why would I do this, right? I mean,
look at him. He's trying to come up with like a good reason for why he charged $2,500 to people, and he's like, do I have to do this again? Do I have to make up another reason?
I know what it's like to wake up in the morning and wonder if your car has been repossessed or not because you couldn't make the payments. I remember that.
Yeah.
Right? I remember parking the car half a mile away to hide it from the repo guy because I didn't have money to pay my lease payments. And it was awful. It was absolutely awful. And it seemed no matter how hard I worked, no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't get out of my own way, right? I was just making so many different mistakes. And I just felt compelled that, I had to help other people make better decisions.
Wow.
Wow.
Unbelievable. This guy's unbelievable. He remembers what it was like to have his car repossessed, which is why he wants to help you make a better decision.
with a one-time purchase of a 2-year subscription for $2,500 to Tika's 5 coins to $5 million. What kind of a better financial decision is spending $2,500 on a newsletter of stock picks? What could be a better decision than that? I don't know. That's really it. I don't want to make this video longer than it has to be. Like, if you believe this guy, then I have a list of other gurus you should maybe invest in too. I hear they cost a very similar amount of money. Yeah. Bye.
May I have the envelope, please?
And the Oscar goes to...
And the Oscar goes to...
And the Oscar goes to...
If you're a 90s kid, you probably recognize this. That's enough. Most of you already know that faster than YouTube's copyright system does. It's the theme song to Drake and Josh. And I, like many people, grew up as a minor watching it. Little did I know, Drake Bell, one of the stars, was returning the favor for some of us. Now, I'm not here to comment on some of the legal issues that have arisen since then, because ultimately they're not my business, and I've heard that they're actually not that major of issues. They're minor. Now, instead, the reason I come before you today is to warn you about a major issue if you're following Drake Bell still. He's been secretly getting paid to shill NFTs. Now, I know that's a shock, right? But even more shocking is I confronted Drake Bell on Twitter about this, and he lied to me, and I'm here to expose it to you guys today, just to prove once again, the blockchain doesn't lie, right? And you can run, but eventually we will catch you. Now, for a little background, before we get into this, Drake Bell, I can't believe this is a real story. It's insane. He's turned into something of a Sam Pepper type figure. You remember Sam, right? From Save the Kids. He's a washed up social media figure, pivoted into shilling altcoins, Twitter, and behind the scenes was getting paid. Now, Drake Bell sort of yoinked that playbook.
Guilty.
But I didn't know about that at first, as we'll get into, but he thought he could get away with it. But like all social media stars, they don't actually understand how crypto works. And so we caught him. We caught him doing some very naughty things to his fans. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the $10 million studio. I'm your host, Coffeezilla, the internet detective. And this is a bit of a weird one. If you guys asked me at the beginning of this year, the weirdest things that were going to happen to me, Drake Bell dropping into my DMs and lying to me was not in the cards, right? Him getting caught at red-handed 4K, not what I had planned. Because he's a real celebrity and we are on the internet. Not disparaging YouTube, but I just thought it was sort of out of our, thing. So for a little context, Drake Bell has been running this NFT shill game, scam game. I don't know what you really want to call it. You can call it all of those. Let's bring down the board and show you what I'm talking about. And I know most of you guys are saying, Stephen, you got trolled by a bot account. But no, it's really him. This is his profile right here. Drake Bell at Drake Bell follows you, 4.5 million followers. And his entire Twitter timeline is these NFT scams. And again, not all NFTs are scams, but the ones that hire these ridiculous influencers to promote them all the time, let's be honest, right? Good morning. What NFT should I buy today? Share some cool projects. And then you look at his actual timeline and it's just him promoting a bunch of these projects. Things like this, Metamons dropping in 6 hours, public mint. And he promotes this thing you guys have probably never heard of. For the past several months, he's been doing this. And people started to wonder if he wasn't getting paid behind the scenes. In fact, one of his fans came to me and told me that he was. Now, I didn't think anything of it. A lot of these guys are promoting this stuff. But it wasn't until Drake Bell himself dropped in my DMs and told me basically, hey, man, I'm here to set the record straight. If you have any questions, let me know, that I thought something was definitely weird. Because generally, I'm not saying you're guilty if you come to me, but I hadn't tweeted about him. I hadn't said anything. And so for him to come, it's like someone knocking on your door and going, I didn't do anything. You're just like, wait, what? You show up at the police station. Look, I just want to clear the record. I didn't do anything. And be like, wait, tell me more about what you didn't do. So he told me that. And I said, I don't know anything. Just tell me, here's what he said, that your accuser said. Here are the allegations. You've been promoting a bunch of these things and being paid behind the scenes. And while I was doing that, since my curiosity was piqued at this point, I decided I'd investigate this man a little bit. And so what do you know, guys? I go to the blockchain and I found his profile, drakebell.eth. Now, right away, I noticed some problems. If you scroll through his transaction history, occasionally you'll notice stuff like this. 200keys.eth paying Drake Bell 0.25 Ether, which is about $1,000. And they paid him the same day as he promoted an NFT called 200 Keys. Here's the promotion he did the same day he got this payment. 200 Keys is a collection of NFT keychains that unlock trades in NFT collection, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? They're having $70,000 worth of giveaways, blah, blah, blah. And there he is shilling it on October 10th. That's the day that he got paid. Now, I was pretty concerned about this because obviously, does he say anywhere that it's an ad, that he's been paid to do this? No. And this is an increasing problem in crypto. Nobody discloses anything because it's bad if you say you're shilling. Instead, people just do it under the radar and hope that nobody ever finds out. But of course we do. So I actually end up confronting Drake about this. And I send him the screenshot of the thing because he's asking me, look, if you want to clear it up, whatever. So I send him this and I say, what do you want to comment? So I send him this. I send him the payment. I say, example, you promoted 200 keys, but got paid $1,000 behind the scenes. This is a problem, Drake. Drake responds, I didn't make $1,000. I got free NFTs, buddy. Now, this was a bold move. I hadn't thought of this. He told me he got paid NFTs. And sure enough, if you go to his NFT collection, it does say he has 3 200 keys NFTs. So I think to myself, that's weird. Maybe the 0.25 ETH he got paid were for minting. As you know, sometimes you have to pay minting fees when minting these things. So I say minting fees. He says, what? I said the 200 keys. They paid you 0.25 ETH the day of your tweet. He said, no, I received 2 free mints. Try again. I thought this was a bit condescending, but I was like, all right, whatever. So I say, is this your wallet? We're back to this, guys. So I say, is this your wallet? And I show him the transaction ID where he got paid. And so he responds now. Now watch this. Yes, he gave me 2 keys and I used the ETH to mint more. Now again, this is different from what he first told me, which is all I got was free NFTs. But I think to myself, well, maybe I just misunderstood. Maybe this is all really on the up and up. Maybe I'm the one in the wrong here. But I don't think so. I got a weird hunch about this. So I said, oh, so you did get paid 25 ETH, 0.25 ETH, like I said. And he said, no, I didn't get paid. I minted keys with the ETH he sent. Very clear statement here. What do you want from me exactly? Well, now at this point, now that we have a very clear statement from him about what he did, I go to the Polygon transactions. That's where all of this occurred. It was on the Polygon chain. And I find those transactions. Now, guys, according to the 200 Keys website, these NFTs cost 50 Matic to mint. So I go to Drake Bell's Polygon address and I find the 200 keys. And I go and I look how much he paid for these. And the first one he paid 0 Matic for. The second one he also paid 0 Matic for, but that should be expected. Remember, that's what he told us happened. Remember, he said he gave me 2 keys and I used the ETH to mint more. He has 3 of them, so he must have paid for the third one. However, when we look up the third key, he also paid 0. So he's just lying and just like lying about something that's so publicly verifiable, it's shocking.
Guilty.
So I respond, you did not mint keys with the ETH 200keys.eth sent. I can see the transaction history. You did not pay a fee for any of the 3 you minted. And he responds, this is my favorite part. They were gifted. I'm confused. I can't get gifted NFTs. I'm confused what you're so upset about. Dude, it's just lie after lie after lie. And it's like, Drake, what happened, bud? Drake and Josh, the payments weren't enough? You broke? What? Why are you doing this for $1,000? You're lying to a YouTuber for $1,000. It has gone too far. It's just such a dumb thing to lie about, by the way. Just say like, yeah, I showed it. They paid me $1,000. I didn't say ad. I'm sorry. Instead, he's like, what? No, I didn't do it. And now that's even funnier. That's a better story. That's funnier than you just got paid $1,000, which is kind of sad, to be honest. But I think poor judgment seems to be a recurring theme here. That's basically the story. I don't know. That's basically it. I caught Drake Bell in multiple lies. Let's count them. First it was, oh, I didn't get paid at all. Then it was, oh, I used it to mint things. Then it's, Oh, what? I can't get a gift? I can't have a gift from an artist? What's the big deal, guys? The crazy thing is that never during this entire conversation with him, even after that, did he ever show any remorse or think that he was at all in the wrong. And it just goes to show, like, when everyone's getting away with it at this scale, because obviously Drake Bell is not the only one who's doing this right now, not disclosing that he's basically advertising for these NFT companies, shilling them to his fans so they buy in and get wrecked. He's not the only one doing it. And he even brought up to me, well, hey, why are you calling me out, dude? Everyone's doing it right now, dude. You should call out him. He's getting paid more. He actually pointed out some people were getting paid more that we're probably going to talk about soon. But he basically said, what? Why are you picking on me? And I've had that experience multiple times recently, guys. I want you guys to understand these influencers, they don't feel bad. Ironically, they feel offended when you call them out. You go, hey, you have to disclose that per the FTC. They go, hey, why are you picking on me?
Guilty.
If just any kind of regulation came in, all of this would stop. The problem is right now, everybody's getting away with it. So these guys, rather than being ashamed of what they do, well, they do lie about it. They are ashamed, but they are just so flagrant with it where even when you do catch them and you do call them out, they go, why are you picking on me? It's like, it's crazy, man. So this is my plea to the FTC, to all these guys watching this space right now. Listen to me right now. I know these guys. I talk to these guys shilling these projects. Right now, they've never been more flagrant. They've never been more willing to do this because right now, there are no consequences. The biggest consequences to Drake Bell is me making a video about him. That's the highest form of punishment right now. And that's no punishment at all. Sorry if I seem like I'm getting upset at the end here, but I'm a little pissed because I'm like, yes, it's Drake Bell's fault. But also, isn't it the fault that none of these guys are getting in trouble? Like, of course, people are going to continue doing it because nobody ever goes down for this stuff. So I'm just saying, if this is if this is a rule, right? This is an FTC guideline. The FTC themselves say that you have to disclose this stuff in their disclosures 101 for social media influencers. How about a little consequences, right? FTC, right? I mean, I think that's fair to say, right? How about a little consequences for these guys? In the meantime, I will continue calling them out. You guys can rely on that. That's maybe the only thing you can rely on. And please, guys, if you like the show, please support this work by pumping the stock. I am but a man, and I need your help. We are at 800,000 subscribers. It's been shocking to get here so fast. So thank you to each and every.
You know, sometimes people say big pharma to talk about a gigantic industry which lobbies our politicians heavily. Well, I've got a new word for you guys today. Big pyramid, aka the direct selling multi-level marketing network marketing industry. Poor little lost sheep. Most of you have no idea how much money these guys have and how much they spend to keep poor people under their thumb. Which is why I, Senior 100K, am here to illuminate the seedy underbelly of Big Pyramid and explain how they bought our politicians on both sides of the aisle. And let me say right up front, I know, I'm aware politics is right now, how do I say it, a touchy subject. And in fact, there's probably not a better way to divide my audience than if I said that a dress is gold and white or the sound is laurel. Boo! But rather than focusing on disagreements, let me remind you guys of something we can all agree on. People who relentlessly seek power suck. I don't care if you're left and right. Can't we all agree on that basic truth? I know, your local politician probably cares, sure. But by the time you get to the tippity top, you're dealing with people who have kicked and clawed their way to power by any means necessary. So leave your partisan politics at the door. We're dealing strictly with power today, which both sides love. Oh, and they love money too. I think we can all agree on that. Even socialists need third houses. So with that little intro, let me ask you a basic question. Why isn't multi-level marketing illegal? We know pyramid schemes have long been illegal in the United States, so why isn't multi-level marketing as well? In the modern vernacular, the words pyramid scheme and multi-level marketing are almost interchangeable for most people. We have clips for days of senior level MLMers admitting that the opportunity is a gigantic bait and switch that enriches the people at the top.
We sell people on a dream business that they can make it, yet deep down inside, what do we really know? Yeah, we know that the reality is that most of them aren't going to make it.
That admission would be comical if it weren't so horrifying. And what I love about this clip is that you basically could give this line to the sociopathic killer Patrick Bateman in the movie American Psycho, and it wouldn't sound out of place at all. MLMs sell people on a dream knowing most people won't make it. It's actually insane.
Who wants to bring their family into a struggle to make it? Who wants to bring their family into an eventual deception?
This guy is like a little Bateman in the making, and I think he's actually the perfect symbolic representation of Big Pyramid, our little Bateman here, because he's following their playbook to a T. It's a two-faced industry. They say one thing to you, the buyer, the guy at the bottom of the pyramid, and the total opposite to the people at the top.
You know, there's some people that if they heard that we were talking like this in a room, you know, I would have to have a bulletproof vest on right now. You know what I mean?
A bulletproof vest. There's only one reason you need a bulletproof vest. It's if you've ruined someone's life and they literally want to kill you. So how is it that even with plenty of evidence, video evidence, Big Pyramid has stayed legal even while their little brother, the pyramid scheme, has become illegal? Well, it's because Little Bateman and the 3D Triangle have bought our politicians on both sides of the aisle. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the history of multi-level marketing buying out our politicians and the Federal Trade Commission. And we're going to start this conversation by talking about one of the oldest MLMs in the fight for the right to pyramid, Amway, owned by Richard DeVos. Richard DeVos is a smart man who learned in the 1970s that if Amway was going to stay alive, they'd need some serious political power to keep themselves from being regulated. And so began the buyout of the Republican Party with massive donations from the DeVos family. Their incredible influence over the Republican Party can be best expressed by a hilarious admission by Betsy DeVos. I quote here, "My family is the single largest contributor of soft money to the National Republican Party. I have decided, however, to stop taking offense at the suggestion that we are buying influence. Now I simply concede the point. They are right. We do expect some things in return." They've gotten to the point they don't care anymore. It's an open secret. They're just going to come out and admit it now. Of course they're buying off the Republican Party. And one of these so-called expectations that they have is, of course, that the Federal Trade Commission doesn't turn around and shut down Big Pyramid and thereby shut down Amway. Now, how does this happen in practice? Obviously, Amway doesn't literally control everybody in the government, but they do have sway over the president. And the presidents choose the chairman and nominates the commissioners of the Federal Trade Commission. This basic fact means that if you have influence over the president, you by proxy have influence over the Federal Trade Commission, the exact body of government that is supposed to be regulating you. Here's a concrete example of how this works. In 2000, George Bush appointed Timothy Murris as the FTC chairman. And who was Timothy Murris before chairman? An attorney whose largest clients included none other than Amway. So in essence, a guy who was protecting Amway from regulation now became the guy who was supposed to be regulating them. And Amway and Bush's relationship was far more than merely financial. They were friends. In fact, Bush actually spoke at Rich DeVos's funeral where he extolled the virtues of Amway.
Here was the overwhelming evidence of the power of free enterprise, what today is the Amway World Headquarters.
Now, of course, when he's talking about the virtue of free enterprise, you have to imagine part of that free enterprise may be the ability to buy protection from regulation from senior officials in the government. But we have to remember, Republicans aren't always in office, and Big Pyramid would, of course, never risk getting caught off guard during the wrong 4 to 8 years political swing, and therefore get regulated. So what do they do if they already have the Republicans in their pockets? Well, they pay the other party too. Bill Clinton was paid $700,000 to do a single speech at an Amway event in Japan.
A lot of you know that Amway Japan's corporate social responsibility agenda includes...
Is it just me, or is it a little weird that this guy's been paid $700,000 to essentially read off a sheet in front of him? Can you get any more transparent that you're paying for political favors?
Amway Japan's corporate social responsibility agenda includes building community houses.
I cannot stand this. Hiring a guy to give a speech in English in a foreign country, basically just reading off a page. Hey, Amway is a great company. Look, I know what this is. Hey, I've done this before. It's called a paid sponsorship, except in this case, he doesn't have to disclose it, right? He doesn't have to disclose it. If I get paid by Audible or Squarespace, I have to disclose it, right? I have to tell you guys I've been paid to say this. Bill Clinton gets paid $700,000 to fly to Tokyo or Japan or wherever, and he could just say this, whatever he wants, reads off his little sponsorship sheet. I know this game.
Not only Clinton, though, but Madeleine Albright, Secretary of State under Clinton, also took money from Big Pyramid, $10 million over 6 years to be brand ambassador for Herbalife.
Well, first of all, you have a great product. That makes all the difference.
We got to tell everybody you're a product of the product.
Well, I am a product of the product.
Did anyone catch that? Where the guy's like, hey, we're paying you $10 million, lady. You got to say it right. You have a great product. No. Say our slogan. You're a product of the product, Madeleine Albright, right?
Well, first of all, you have a great product. That makes all the difference.
Then we got to tell everybody you're a product of the product.
Watch her try to correct herself.
Well, I am a product of the product. I was very impressed. Truly impressed.
Truly impressed. Get real, guys. Get real. I say you have to disclose when you're getting paid $10 million when you're going to shill some product. This is messed up. How come they can make $10 million? I can't even make a few $1,000 without saying, hey, guys, hey, whoa, guys, careful. Don't buy this without knowing that I was fully paid for this interview and it affected my decision. Of course it did, to say what I'm going to say about the product. Madeleine Albright makes $10 million. She can't even pull off that sponsorship read. Guys, I could have done this. Look, maybe I take back everything I said about Herbalife. Maybe I should become a part of Big Pyramid. I don't know. Anyways, on with the show. I just had to point that out.
But pressing forward, we find even more ties. John Leibowitz, who was appointed by Obama as the FTC chairman after his appointment ended, also went to Herbalife to serve as a senior advisor. So after he works for the Federal Trade Commission as chairman, he goes to Herbalife. You get that? You get the revolving door that's going on here? Obama appoints him chairman, goes to Herbalife to serve as senior advisor. AKA, Daddy Warbucks wants his money after helping Shake Shack. Okay? If I need to break it down, third grade level, that's just what it is. And to bring us now to present times, now we've got old Trumpster who's massively tied in with all the MLMs from the beginning. We have Trump Network.
The Trump Network offers people the opportunity to achieve their American dream.
I'm still looking for dreams. I'm doing damn well in life, but I'm still looking for the dream.
And also ACN, a separate MLM that he endorsed where he reportedly got paid millions just to endorse them and speak. Leading to yet another presidency where Big Pyramid gets away with everything and nothing is done. And obviously the Amway influence hasn't waned at all either, with Betsy DeVos becoming a political player now as the Secretary of Education. Let me just say right off the bat, she didn't get picked because of her SAT scores. And what's my point with all of this? Obviously, both parties are complicit. Big Pyramid money runs through the very heart of our political institutions, and it's going to keep going like this until enough people have the balls to stand up and say enough is enough. And I say people plural because it takes more than one rich dude with an axe to grind to do it. We already all saw Bill Ackman try and fail. And anytime a billionaire fails at anything, you know that there are some serious players at the other end of the table. What is encouraging, though, is that word is out. Big Pyramid is no longer fighting the battle for public opinion. They've already lost that. Huge subreddits like anti-MLM and massive videos like the piece that John Oliver put out have really exposed this industry for what it is: predatory. What is left to do, however, is call out this incestuous relationship between MLM and the Federal Trade Commission, brought to you by Big Dono Money, baby. We gotta make it stop. That's all I basically wanted to say. All that's left to do now is say that you should go read Robert Fitzpatrick's report on MLMs, which I've kind of summarized here. Robert Fitzpatrick is a leading expert on MLMs and a renowned critic I interviewed during my first investigation into MLMs on Coffee Break. If you want to find out more on the subject, just read his stuff. It's great. I'll link his relevant report on this below. That's all for now. I'll see you in the next one. And as always,
don't forget to smash like